when I was in law school in the 1970s, for instance, wrongful death of children were being settled for about $5,000. And I thought that's incredibly wrong. And the values of those cases grew over the years until when I tried my first wrongful death case of a child, it was 1992. And by then, the average value of a liability case where they pretty much conceded liability was about $250,000. And I still thought that that was way too low. As a father of four, I knew that it just wasn't fair. But that's what juries were awarding. And my first jury trial with wrongful death of a child, they offered $250,000, and I demanded $600,000 because I still, there's not enough money to replace a child, but it was more than double what the juries were awarding. But I decided that what I was going to do with that case is I was going to find out as much as I could about that child. And I visited the home of the child. The parents had me over, and I walked into it was a girl named Alice, and I walked into her room, and it was like she had not died. It was perfectly maintained. They had a prom dress, hanging on the door of the closet. And I asked them about that, and they said, well, this is what Allison would have worn to her junior prom. And they continued to live as if Allison wasn't gone. And it was profoundly affected me how they were dealing with this death. And it wasn't just this family, because I remember, because this family was an Hispanic family, I went to another family, it was an Asian mother. And I went to the house to learn more about her son that died. And I said, show me his room. And we walked to the door, and it was left in the same condition as it was the moment he walked out the door the day he died. So they had preserved his bedroom, not in the exact same manner as in which he left. In the first case, they had made Allison's bed. In this case, the Asian boy's room still had his clothes and shoes on the floor as if he was going to come home that night. And what I learned was even more so the pain that the wrongful death of a child causes. And when on that first case I went to trial in 1992, and I can say now I've represented so many parents for the wrongful death of a child, I really can't count them all. But in wrongful death cases, it's just not a numbers game. What are the loss of earnings? But for instance, in a wrongful death of a child, there is some numbers involved. The number of what would that child have contributed to the support of the parents when that child became an adult and during their common life. But it's what's the value of the lost love and companionship and society is one word they use. It's in the jury instructions of the loss of that child. And it's not something where there's a formula or you can calculate it. It's something that the better the lawyer, the more persuasive they are, the better they're going to convey to the jury the loss that the parents have. So in the wrongful death of a child, for instance, it really depends on the skill and the preparation of the lawyer. And that lawyer can't just deal with the file in the office. That lawyer has got to interview the surviving siblings of the deceased child, go to the house, try and live that life to see that void that now exists without that child. And the more the lawyer knows about the family and the better prepared the lawyer is, and the better the lawyer is, frankly, with arguing with the jury. And when I say argue, I mean summarizing the loss and persuading the jury for the loss, is the more money they're going to award. So it's a classic case. The better the lawyer, the better the result. In my case with Allison, the deceased girl, I made a demand of $600,000. And I didn't expect them to pay it just because it was so much more than what the cases were going for at that time, and we had disputed liability. But on the first day of trial, they came up, which often happens, they'll offer more money on the first day of trial, and they did, and they offered $500,000, and we, in conjunction with talking to the parents, we turned it down. And I was able to persuade the jury because of the investigation I had done with the family and and being in the family home and getting to know who this child was and her friends and talking to her brother and sister to persuade the jury to what I thought was still, it set a record in San Bernardino County at that time. I asked the jury for $2 million, and the jury awarded that, and it became a record in San Bernardino County at that time for the wrongful death of a child, which, again, there's never enough for something of this nature. But at the time, it was 8 times more than what cases of that type were going for in Superior Court jury trials.